So I mean, the best I've got is bonjour. It's only one of the 4 French words I actually know. So well, we can go with bonjour if you guys like it. Okay. So it's our new very original app called Bonjour, and I hope we don't get sued by any company that's actually named that. But let's get started. So CoffeeScript first. Let's make that work. I'm actually going to just delete this thing that I just created because I forgot to use the linker, which will eventually be the default again. I was tricked into removing it. Basically, I thought it was a good idea too. I made the wrong decision. It's really good to have some of that stuff built in for you to compile your less files, and not having it is crippling. So we're going to create with Sails new bonjour here. And what that does is basically just sets up the right file structure so that the grunt file will actually do all the stuff it's supposed to do. So now let's take a peek at what's in here. You've got kind of at the top level, you have node modules, which is built in a node, or that's a concept from node that just contains all of your app's dependencies. Views is what we're going to look at first. This is where your basic, your HTML lives, right, for your app. Any HTML that you want to actually send back from the server. Like, I go to google.com, I get an HTML page with some kind of silly drawing on it, right? So that's what views are for. Just a quick high-level overview. Config is all of the things you might want to change and not do by default about anything from the way Socket.io is configured and set up. If anyone has worked with Sails considerably in the past, you can see we added on disconnect and on connect events for when your sockets join recently. But yeah, so just everything, your logger, your adapters. So if I want to switch to using MySQL, I go in here and I set that up. That'll be renamed connections in 0.10 to make it clear what's going on here. Because this is a list of connections. I might have like Johnny's MySQL database, John's MySQL database. Those are 2 connections I have. They're both using the MySQL adapter, right? So imagine that someday that will change. There'll be a migration guide to guide people through that. We don't make any kind of changes that would break backwards compatibility until we do a minor version, which would be like going from 0.9.0 to 0.10.0, which sounds really annoyingly precise, but we've messed up too many times in the past. Assets is essentially like your public folder from CodeIgniter or Rails, and what this is all of the stuff that you want to have accessible to flat files like robots.txt. If Google sends little web spiders to your website, you can change this file to specify how you want them to crawl it for search engines. Your favicon, so that's like the little guy or whatever. So anyways, you've got when you make an app with linker, you get this folder, and all of this stuff inside of linker will actually get injected into your layout file. So I think maybe we should just be able to do like test.coffee, and someone who knows how to actually write CoffeeScript should tell me how to do this. Is it like, is that right? Okay, good. And I don't need semicolons, right? I think the CoffeeScript's pretty neat. I'm just afraid of change. All right. So let's see if it works here. Okay, yeah, I guess that one works on the front end at least. We can test the back end next. So that's how you use CoffeeScript on the front end with the linker enabled. So on the back end, let me show you how to, and I'm actually a little bit more curious if this works myself, because I don't ever use, I've used this even less than the other stuff. If I do Sails lift with -- verbose, you're going to get all of this information about what's going on under the covers. You can do the same thing by going into your app's configuration here, and then going to the log file. And then you can change that to verbose, but that command line deal is just there because, it's annoying to go change that every time you want to do this. At the very beginning of this, you'll see what happens is it says enabling CoffeeScript here. and that's your session secret. So there is logic somewhere in the framework to actually, all you really have to do to make CoffeeScript work is require it the right way. So hopefully we did it right. If we make a new coffee file, let's call it what's in here? So this is bonjour. So maybe we'll have like call it remark controller or something. And so now I really need everybody's help. So to do an object in CoffeeScript, this is how I would do it in JavaScript. No semicolon. Okay. And then I'll do maybe index, and then one of those little funny deals. Okay. And then I have rec and. Okay. All right. Here we go. What's that? A comma? Maybe parentheses? Ah, good. Okay. I'm sorry. I feel like a child for you guys here, but this is good for me. It's good for me to grow. Okay, so then I can like return res.send. Yeah, let's try that. Hello world. Okay. Well, really, shouldn't it be bonjour world? All right, so let's make sure that actually works. If I go to / what did we name our controller remark? Okay. No, it's not your fault. The thing is, that's not documented at all. So, I mean, now it is, hopefully, if we make this a screencast. And then people can help write docs for it. But that is, seriously, that's one of the areas we're working on most next. 0.10 also includes support for ORM associations. So, like a user having many remarks, that sort of thing. We're using that on a client project now. So it's to the point where we're trying it out. There's actually an experimental branch in GitHub if you want to play with it. I'm going to avoid talking about it here because I know parts of it you have to know kind of where not to use right now. It looks a lot like Mongoose, basically. But before we release that, that's going to be such a big change and such a new thing that I want to make sure all of our docs are really great, or at least not sucky. So that's kind of what the next step for me personally is going through our docs. Hopefully while I'm here a little bit, actually. Cool. So what other questions? And if not, what's the first feature we should work on? All right. Maybe. Yeah. But what is so bonjour? Maybe bonjour is about. You want to do some internationalization, perhaps? Like people visiting from France versus the U.S. versus I guess China would see different stuff, right? And sometimes in localization in general can be good. This is it's something you kind of expect from these MVC frameworks. So what I can do is if I visit the home page, just / this will be a good opportunity to cover a little bit of background too on how all this works. And that's going to get really annoying, so I'm going to remove it. All right, so assets, linker, JS, test.coffee. Oh, no. Oh, God. All right, is that right? Okay. I didn't even need to do that. Sorry. So it'll actually watch for changes in the file. So I can, if I go back in here and I delete that guy. Oh, man, sorry. Right. Okay. So if I'm looking at this page right now. If I go in and I make changes to that CoffeeScript file, right. So what it's doing with Grunt is watching for changes to that linker folder and actually your assets folder in general, and it copies all the stuff over, recompiles everything, so that you have that boilerplate build tooling set up for you by default. Okay, so now we'll do this. So this is your layout, and this is actually something that was removed in Express 3 from Express. we added it back in just for EJS because EJS is the default. Some view engines or templating languages support this sort of layout file that then you like inject a body into, right? Which is like the page you're currently viewing. And some don't. EJS is one of the ones that doesn't. Even though actually the author of Express created EJS, which is, still don't understand how that guy's made so many modules. But if you look in here, there's a bunch of inline CSS because you're going to delete this anyways eventually. And I'm just going to grab all this stuff and delete it. And now we have nothing. So I can, all my kind of boilerplate layout stuff, I'll just leave the same. So in here, let's say like, bonjour, the next big thing, and what else is important about bonjour? Well, we're going to want to have like, just for the purpose of right now, let's have like a little explanation of what bonjour is. Also, this will help us figure out what bonjour is. Is an app that lets you share things with friends. What other people? What do people make apps about? Share things with friends, and photos too. Sorry. All right. So now the important thing is that you guys are going to teach me French. So all of this stuff is brought right there. By default, what you get with Sails are these locales, which are, to use the little README file here, basically JSON files that map different keys to different values for different languages. Or I guess they don't have to be languages for certain, but they are different areas of the world at least. So here, instead of bonjour, if I did, maybe our app isn't actually named bonjour when people from Germany visit it, right? So I'll call this __ welcome. And that's just a function that's in here. I can also call it I18N if that makes me feel better about it and know what's going on. But this __ is something from other languages that's been around for a while. So now, because my browser is using English by default, it says welcome, but I could go to MC Solar, which I created after reading my girlfriend's French textbooks, and this one is hooked up, I think, to actually use, like the French stuff, which has been lots of fun for me. But let's, I'm going to turn that off, guys, sorry. Okay. The US is awake, it appears. All right, so if I visit localhost, I get bienvenue. Assuming I said that all right. So what we might want to change this to is, instead of welcome, let's teach our app how to translate hello. Which is that the right translation of bonjour? Okay, good. So, hello in English is going to be hello. And we're not going to worry about Spanish support out of the gate necessarily. And this practice, if you guys haven't seen this before, is something that, like, if a big company has an app they make, these are called string files sometimes, and they'll send these off to be translated, and then just get them back from, like, non-technical folks will just go and fill this stuff out. It's interesting what'll happen sometimes, but if anyone ever says, like, oh, we have to do internationalization, most of the work they're talking about is actually getting the translators to make these files. So let's say hello means bonjour, and we must not have done it quite right. Oh. Let's try restarting it. So I guess you have to restart it for internationalization to work. Okay, so now we've got, we have a plan for how we're going to do our bonjour versus hello apps. Let's, actually, maybe you guys can help me translate the rest of this really quick. So how would I say the next big thing, or something even better in French?
I like McDonald's.
Oh, now I'm going to have to spell this, aren't I? Oh man.
J'aime McDonald's.
Maybe we'll just leave it in English for now, and then later I'll fix it. Okay. I'm not ready for it yet, I guess. Okay, so here's the hello version, which just so I can have it all in the same tab. Let's I mean, unless anyone has any objections, let's make the little chat thing underneath, maybe. Okay. So I'm just going to do this with jQuery to avoid making things too specific to one front-end library. It's one really important thing about Sails is, contrary to something like Meteor or Derby, where you're trying to solve the whole problem, I'm too scared of solving that whole problem because it's really hard to solve the front-end and the back-end problem at the same time. Sails is totally focused on creating a real-time enabled API, right? And you can make traditional web apps like you would make with Rails with it as well. But what it's not going to do for you is write your client-side JavaScript ever. So that said, you need to use a front-end framework with Sails. If you're going to make a production app, you need to use something like Angular or Backbone or Ember, right? And here we'll use jQuery for simplicity and to avoid getting down a rabbit hole. But I can't stress that enough, that otherwise you will tend to get kind of tangled up, I think. And especially if you're building a team of many developers, it really helps to have some sort of structure. And some people have their own proprietary structure for how they do things, and that's also fine, as long as you have a plan for, when I need to make a new UI element interactive on my page, here's what I'm going to do. Instead of like what I would do, which is like, oh shit, and start writing little script tags. Okay, so here's our chats, and here, let's say this is one chat. Something we do at Balderdash, which is maybe interesting, maybe not, is we always do the HTML and CSS first on the front end, and then we add JavaScript on later. One reason is because then you don't need to know JavaScript to be able to write the HTML and CSS, and we have some prototyping tools we use to make that possible with single-page apps. The other thing is it also forces all of the states, like if you're going to have a loading spinner or a little 500 error message, they all end up in there before you actually start trying to hack stuff together. So it tends to be a little bit more stable on average. Okay, so here are our chats, and so we know what one chat's going to look like. Maybe we should put the author inside, right? And maybe strong. So this would be the author, which maybe MC Solar can be the author of this one. Okay, and I'll be bad and use one of those guys for right now. Okay, so there we have MC Solar. What are the kind of things that MC Solar says? Right. This would be a perfect example where internationalization won't solve your problems, right? So I could totally go in here and find some French stuff and paste it in. But then what about my English version? Well, the thing is, this is dynamic data, right? These chats are going to be coming from the server. You can't really use that internationalization strategy to know how to translate everything ever. It only knows how to translate the really static stuff you actually program in, right? So internationalization is great for some things. It's great for what your submit button says, but it's not so great for what translating the stuff that someone posted. If you're going to do that, that's a whole other world of problems. But at least for right now, I'll just paste that in there. So I hope that's not something horrible. Okay, so this is MC Solar's chat. Maybe we want to know when he posted it. Anything else we might want to include? Oh, look at that. Amazing. Chrome can do that. Okay, so now we have and I'm also going to I'm not going to really do anything proper for templates, right? You're supposed to use a template. Oh, shoot, we actually have that built into Sails, so I will do something proper for templates. This here is going to be our, we could have lots of more chats, right? MC Solar might just be spamming the same stuff over and over and over again. Well, we know what this is going to look like here. We know that this is going to be its own template, right? It needs to be used more than once. So we know we're going to have to pull that out. The last thing we need before we go any further is maybe a little form. And I hate having to deal with that event e.prevent default business, so I'm not going to actually make it a real form, which would be kind of bad. But or maybe we'll do these fancy data attribute things. All right, so then this will be an input which basically says, you know, type something, what's on your mind? Right, and we got that little guy down there. Enter your message. Cool, so we'll just do some really quick styles here. And we can do that in assets linker styles. I'm going to do less just because I'm a fan of that. You can hook it up with Sass or SCSS or whatever you want. It's all, or stylus even, it's all part of your grunt file. So just install more stuff in your dependencies if you want grunt, contrib, Sass, or whatever, and just change it like you normally would. So this will be our, maybe our layout.less or something. And let's just say, you know, div data form. Let's give it a little bit of a margin. Is that going to work for us? Something I always do, and I'm never sure if styles are actually coming on the page, is just make the background red. And see, it's not working. We need to restart the server the first time we inject styles, I believe. Yeah, there we go. And that's part of grunt contrib copy, I think. There's an issue with that, or it's either copy or watch, where the create event isn't firing properly. And we've hacked some of that stuff. I think we changed the JST grunt module, but they still haven't accepted our fork, so we ended up publishing a separate NPM module for it. Anyways, that's why we don't want to go down the front end route. There's just so much there. Okay, so we've got this data form thing. We have, you know, enter a message. When I fill out this stuff here, we want to have, now we're going to write some JavaScript. We want to have something happen, right? So maybe, well, let's listen to the, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a new file for this, just to keep things simple. Just real quick, what gets included by default here is this app Sails.io.js and socket.io.js. Socket.io is just the socket.io client you get normally. Sails.io is just the wrapper that takes the socket.io client and changes it so that you get these nice get, post, put, and delete methods on it. So it's like doing jQuery.get or jQuery.post, but then you can do socket.post, socket.get. And app is just an example app that sets things up for you. And you can kind of pull that apart and mess with it if you want. But what I'll do here is to make a separate file. This file, you know, we want to look at inside of data form. You know, I always prefix my jQuery elements with those little dollar signs. And the first thing to do is always just make sure your selectors work in jQuery. So I don't have any jQuery, do I? So that's the next thing to do. And this would be a good example because we can just, you can kind of see how to modify your grunt file a little bit. Here's my jQuery. Here is, in my linker folder, I'm going to just make a new file called, you know, $.js, paste that crap in there. And it might work now. It happens to work, right? And the reason it happens to work is because jQuery ended up coming before Bonjour.js. You don't have any guarantee of that normally. So what you want to do is go into here, where in your grunt file, where it says JS files to inject. And then I want to actually add jQuery to that, right? Where it says put other dependencies here. So make sure we have jQuery first. Okay. So that's good. We want that. Let's be sure that works. Good. Right. So there's our selector. We've got the data form element. There he is. We want his input. And we're just going to grab, whatever, any input in there and say, cool, so the value of that input is going to be the chat to send. Right? Cool. So how do we ever even end up here? Well, we want to probably have an event that listens for maybe key press or something. It's probably a proper way to do this is actually use a real form, wrap it in a submit event handler, and then do that event prevent default stuff, which I don't want to do right now because I always forget how it works. But I have to look it up every time still. Right. I think this will work for us, yeah? Now that's going to, every time we press any key is going to happen, so I think we can do e.keycode equals 13, maybe? Okay. So basically, if that's true, then we actually want to do things, and we'll, for now, just send this alert. Good, that works. So where do we send this chat, which is a good question. So we have this socket thing because we know that our little app file creates it for us here. And this just does the basic connection and setup logic for socket.io. Socket.post, because we're creating something on the server. And we're going to send that to, what? Remark, I guess, right? Because we did do a generate remark. Right, so we have a remark controller. It happens to be CoffeeScript. We don't have a model yet, though. So what you'll see, which is interesting, maybe, is, even if we try to do all the fancy stuff, we don't get anything because we don't have a model, so it doesn't know how to generate that API for us. So if I just do generate model, remark, it's letting me know, hey, you need to have a controller too. I do, and it's CoffeeScript. So my index action is still going to override the default CRUD logic, but we still have access to creating remarks like this. Okay, so this is good. You can see the socket reconnects if you kill the server and start it up again. When I send this to /remark, I'm going to send as I'm going to go with payload again. The chat to send. And that's it. So, we probably want to do something in a callback here, maybe, someday. One thing we might want to do is, lock the input, draw a loading spinner, and then in here, maybe, clear input, hide loading spinner. And I'll go ahead and clear the input because that part's easy. So, e.current target, I think, will work. Val, like that, maybe. Oh, I have some kind of bug. Could not parse, hello world, syntax error. No problem. That's just because the socket.io client's getting that result we sent back, and it's not well-formed JSON, right? So it doesn't know how to handle it on the front end. So there's bonjour world. So let's change that in our. There's two things we can do here, and I'm going to do the easiest one. I'm just going to comment this out. I could have also changed on the front end. Instead of remark, I could have hit remark/find. Right. So now I think we can, hey there, and it sends it, and nothing else happens for us at the moment. But if we check and we go to remark, awesome, there it is. So we have hey there in the server. What next? Well, this is chat, so an important thing is actually the real-time part. I'm going to do that last because it's actually pretty simple. Let's have it initially fetch the chats for you. Okay, so if I come to the page, these are persistent chats. The first thing we want to have happen is let's actually get the content of this list and all the different things MC Solar has said recently. So we will do a right off the gate, a socket.get. We need to wait in the same way that here I really ought to wait until document's ready, shouldn't I, to do all this stuff. And that's what that's doing. So when the document, but when the DOM is ready. And that's just to document our code here. This is saying, when you press a key, that one's obvious. But this is when the server responds. Okay. So we also need to wait to do anything until we have a live connected socket to work with sockets. Here it's in an event handler, so we can be reasonably safe that the socket is connected. In reality, you'd want to use a little bit more structure, which is why I'm referring to the backbone stuff, to make sure that you always have a socket and a jQuery ready before you do anything. Here in app.js, a lot of that's already done for you. So you can see here in socket on connect, you have a socket now, so you can do stuff. So in here I might say socket.get/remark, which is going to get all the remarks from the server. So let's do something with that. We want to have jQuery. So this is, again, use backbone, because otherwise how do I know if I have jQuery or not? I'm going to find our little, where's our little guy? I'm going to find this list of chats, and so chats. You guys might have to help me with selectors too, because I forget a lot. We're going to basically replace the contents of that with a list of our new chats that we just got from the server. So just to refresh, we got these remarks here. These two guys, it's just a JavaScript list. So someone help me, what's next? Without underscore, what's next? So remarks sub I is going to be an individual remark, and let's be good JavaScript developers and do this. Okay, so now we're going to say every time we get, for each of these remarks, and this is, yes, it's inefficient because it's doing a lot of DOM queries, but I'm lazy for right now. So we're going to take the chats thing and we're going to, what is it, append maybe? Append, okay. And now, okay, crap, our templating solution, what are we going to do for templating? Well, right now I'm just going to do something really bad and inline this this giant chunk of HTML. So forgive me. And we can use JST, but just to make this easy for now, I don't want to complicate things further. Okay. Cool, so right now this is a weird app because no matter what, it's always MC Solar talking still. But that's okay. It's a step in the right direction. And there we go. So we're always going to stick that in for every chat we find. At least we know how many actual chats came from the server, yeah? So we actually need to clear it out first. So we added 2 chats, but we didn't actually remove the ones that were already there. So, and while we're doing this, we may as well make it more efficient and do this DOM query up here. And then let's clear it out. I think that works. Yeah, there we go. There's a bit of a flicker, and we could make that sexier, but we're gonna delete this stuff anyways from here because we don't need it anymore, right? So we don't even need to clear that stuff out. Who cares? It's like the honey badger. All right. So now we have all these remarks getting stuck in here. Again, I'm going to be lazy with templating and just replace MC Solar's name with the name of the person submitting the chat. We actually don't know who they are yet. We'll get to that in a moment. So let's leave those in there and say that the chat, and this is, yes, open to DOM injection, use a templating solution. This is remark.payload. So let's see if it works. Right, so the first one was a fake one, and then the second one was hey there. And now MC Solar says this, and I refresh, and now it says that. Okay, so that's fun and cool and stuff. We need to. I can already tell this is going to get annoying if we have our chat thing at the bottom, because we're going to keep having to follow it down. So I'm going to put it up top. Good. Okay. So it would be cool if this happened in real time, right? And this is where the Sails stuff helps quite a lot. So we have this logic here, which is how we inject a new chat. What I'm going to do is pull it out into a function. And let's say that our function will be a thing that takes a remark JavaScript object, and then we'll inject the appropriate chat. Okay, so we'll call it, append new chat, and pass it a remark. And maybe we should be consistent with our terminology here, but so append new remark, right? And this is, we put the functions wherever we want because JavaScript lets you do that. But I'll put mine up here, I think. And this is append new remark. There we go. That's all it has to do. It needs this guy, though. And it gets one argument, which is remark. We make it look good. Then we use space. We use tabs because How many of you guys use tabs? How many use spaces? Spaces instead. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. It's CoffeeScript people, isn't it? Yeah. Huh. No, everyone else in my company likes spaces more, to the point that I was understanding an FBoss that I was like, fine, we'll use spaces, but I regret it every single day. So, and only because it makes me, I don't know. Okay, so I see why people like it though. Append new remark. Let's just be sure our code still works. It still works. This is good. All right. So then every time we get a new message from the server, you'll notice that here, if I open up two browser windows and I say, "Hey, it's me again, MC Solar," we see over here, new comment message received, and there he is. Hey again, it's me, MC Solar. What's happening here is that the other thing the Sails built-in API does is a little bit of pub sub for you. So because I've found that chat, I found MC Solar through a socket connection, or I found these chats that he's made, I probably care about new ones, right? And I probably care about updates to the existing chats. So if I over here and I see, and this works whether it's socket.io or HTTP. So let's say that I wanted to, this thing really bothers me that that's undefined. So I want to update it. I can do remark update. It's the one that has ID of 1. Because you can see there's no payload there. That wouldn't fly if this was MySQL, right? But you can change the database at any time. Right now it's using the little development-only disk database. So update 1, let's set the payload equal to anything but what it was. Okay. So we actually got a new comment message because of that, which is, oh look, this is the new payload. We know that it was updated, and we know the model is called remark. So you can see we have all the plumbing we need. We just have to update this in the DOM now, right? And how far we want to go with that is completely up to you, right? Does it matter? I don't know. But now the feature is implementing this front-end part and not implementing the pub sub stuff on the back end. So the thing we really do care about in a chat application is, instead of just logging this stuff, we'll log it just so we have it, but we'll also call append new remark. But we only want to do that if it's a create of a remark, right? It might be some other activity that we don't care about, or we don't know how to handle yet. So if message.model is equal to remark, and message verb is equal to create, well, then we'll do stuff, and we're going to append a new remark, and we're going to pass in the message.data, which is this object here. Okay. You guys think that'll work? I have no idea. Let's see. If I then create a new chat, hi, bam, cool. So now we have real-time creates. And that's actually for chat all we really care about. It's me, the other MC Solar. So now you have real-time stuff going on in the browser, which is cool, and that's what everyone gets really excited about. It's a nice thing for like, hey boss, look what I did really quick, and then you can throw that out there. Also, it's just like any app would be better if it had real-time in it, right? And really, it's up to you how much you want to implement of on the front end. Salesforce, right, has some CRM, or it's a CRM that has some real-time features nowadays. Podio has some of that stuff. Zendesk, a support ticketing tool, like added some of that stuff later. It's always better to have the actual state of the database without having to request the server again. It's like it's much closer to like your computer had all of the world's data in it, which is where we're headed, right? It's this we're just trying to beat the singularity. So from there, we have the default chat stuff. Where do you guys want to know next? And also, how are we doing on time? What? How are we doing on time? Okay. So stuff I think we maybe should talk about is like doing some more of the custom stuff. You know, what happens when this doesn't meet your needs exactly anymore. But I want to let you guys drive that. If you have any other questions, you can answer. Cool. All right, custom controllers. Oh, go ahead. Great question. So what you can do is, how many people is anyone else going to be unit testing stuff with Sails, you think? All right. So let's talk about it now. Otherwise, I'd say let's do it after. Because it's a little bit more advanced, but and it's only advanced because it hasn't been automated yet, basically. What I'd love to be able to tell you is that we have Sails generate test, you know, which would be neat. But right now, that actually just creates a model and controller called tests. So if anyone wants to code that up, that'd be great. What we'll do, though, is we'll make a test folder. And the way these tests usually work is you want some kind of like fixture that will be the thing, your application, and then you want to be able to send a message to that application and test that it returns the right thing. So for our MC Solar fan app, we might want to know what it is. We might want to know that when I do a create of a chat actually gets created, right? So cool. Let's write a test for our. And at this point, you have to ask yourself, I mean, I didn't really write any code, right, on the back end, so what am I testing? I mean, so this stuff is tested in Sails. Something that someone did submit a pull request for at one point was to generate the tests and then put them in your project for the default API logic, which I thought was really cool, but it ended up it needed to be rebased, and so I don't think that's happened yet. But I really dig that concept. In the meantime, why don't we test our own controller method? So we have a test controller. Let's say that we write a method called, what's the thing you might do? Maybe login. So depending on what you're trying to test, you know, it gets more complicated. But let's try to do a, here's what login might look like, right? So we check to see, we got a username, we got a password. And now basically when you're logging in, all you really want to do is check to see, does this username and password match something I'm familiar with? And if it does, store this stuff in the session, indicating that this person, like, in their session, they're okay, right? They're an acceptable user to be in the app. So maybe we'll do rec.session.authenticated just because it's a quick hack, or is authenticated maybe, equals true. And, you know, let's then check, we do have users, right? Yes. No, we don't. So Sails generate user. You know, let's check to see if, we'll use this notation. And this actually would probably be clearer if I did it like this. Yeah. So this is us using the Sails ORM. It's called Waterline to get stuff from the database. This is JavaScript, so database stuff takes time, which actually that might be a thing to explore later. I don't want to take the time away to look at that right now, but if anyone's interested in talking about or hearing about kind of why Node is interesting versus other stuff like Rhino that came before, the fact that even doing a disk read is asynchronous, even doing the really low-level DNS request is asynchronous, is one of the reasons why Node is like such a fundamentally new thing. Basically, it rewrote a bunch of 20-year-old libraries for Unix. Anyways, so I nerd out about that stuff. But what we have is this callback function that runs when I have the users, right? And it has the users that were returned. And I can say, okay, well, if there was an error, this is a common Node pattern, I need to handle that error. There's something in the current version that I'm going to release tonight that is essentially out right now that allows you to do this res.server error thing. All that means is it's basically like it just replaces the default express error handler and runs this stuff, which is your default 500 handling code. You can change that to whatever you like. And of course, you're welcome to do your own custom error handling instead. But a lot of times, all you want to do is just like, an error, you know? So the other thing that could happen is no users were returned, which means who is this person that's knocking at my door? So we'll just do res.forbidden. That runs the default 403 logic, which is probably not actually what we want, right? We probably want to say that, you know, bad request maybe or something like that. But we'll, for right now, just send JSON back and say status, I don't know, success false, okay? Right, and what I have with Node and with this kind of, you end up doing a lot more asynchronous stuff than you would normally. There's a pattern you see a lot of times where you just don't have any else's anymore, and you just return because you're in a callback function anyways. So that's when you see that happening, that's why. It just makes it easier. You don't nest yourself so deep. So if we did find a user, well, we know we only want to find one user, so we can do that. This way, we only have to deal with one. We don't have to look and see if there's more than one in there. Cool. If it's a user that matches, we'll go ahead and log them in. And maybe we care about remembering who they are, too. Yeah, and then we're done. So then we send back, you know, res.json success true. Okay, so now we need to write tests for this, which was how we got here anyways. Let's see if it works. You know, the first test to write is, does it actually do what I think it does, right? So let's try to hit test/login and success false because it didn't match. And if I set, you know, username equals Mike and password equals bonjour, still going to be success false. But if I go create that user in the database, create username equals Mike and password equals bonjour. Now notice I'm not actually doing anything fancy with my passwords. If you are, you need to actually encrypt them when you're doing this check before you do the check, right? Instead of passing in the plain text password, you're going to want to do like encrypt. And then whenever you sign up a new user, you also encrypt their passwords. That way you never save unencrypted passwords in the database. You can also use the before validation or before create methods built into the ORM to do that. But nonetheless, let's we have our user over here now. We're going to log in, and now I'm logged in, success true. Cool. So what we expect to happen is exactly that. For my test file, let's make a test for, I guess, the test controller, or let's just call it login.test.js for right now. Okay, and this is why it's sort of a hard problem right now, is because you have to know how Sails works internally to be able to do this. But what you're going to do is require Sails in this test. And I'm going to check to be sure that's exactly right. Yeah, so you require sales. Just a quick look into how the core works. There's this thing. I'm going to go to development branch. There's this thing called the app module, which is basically you can new up as many sales as you want, which leads to interesting possibilities for things like Docker. But that's neither here nor there. What we want is this sales thing, and so we need to actually get sales index.js, which is actually going to new up a new sales. That's not quite what we want. That's there for backwards compatibility. So we have to do this, which is kind of annoying. But that'll get us the actual sales constructor. Okay. Oh, let's try that again. So we're going to run that module. Can't find sales lib app because I don't actually have sales installed locally. I can do that. Now I do. Right, so it works. So this is our sales constructor. I'm going to, I can new up sales if I like. And this is our instance of sales, our test sales. And then I run our sales.lift. That's going to be for integration tests. That's going to actually create a real server. So you get this callback, right? Which is kind of what you would think. I don't want to. Let's do an integration test because that's going to be more useful and capture everything. For unit tests, you actually don't need to do all that. You just need to load it in memory, and you're not going to actually send real HTTP requests to it or socket requests. You're just going to trigger an event on it. So you're going to do rsales.emit requests. And the way that sales works is actually now set up to where you can support in different sorts of servers. So Socket.io and Express happen to be servers attached to the sales router, which will then normalize and use the same notation. And the way it works internally is you have this emit stuff that lets you, it's just a node event emitter, and you can handle it that way. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's talk about lifts. This is going to actually new up the server. So let's do rsales.log. Okay, we made it this far. And what did I mess up? Right. Unexpected token illegal. It doesn't like the CoffeeScript that I'm using. So I guess maybe I'm gonna remove it for right now. If you don't mind. We'll come back though. We'll come back to that. I think what probably needs to happen there is when you actually the CoffeeScript support's baked into the binary, the CLI, and not the actual sales lib stuff. Anyway, so we made it this far, and now we're just hanging out because until we kill sales, it's going to be there. So when we're done doing our testing, we do our sales.lower, like lowering the sales, and then when that's finished, we're done, and we're in here. And always handle your errors. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just going to log them in case they happen to be there. But we made it this far, and then here we basically killed sales. And I guess it fires that lots of times. It fires it for, I think, SIGHUP, if anyone's into C and how computers actually work. I think SIGHUP, SIGINT or something. I don't know. Basically, it just tries everything it can to kill all of the child processes that get created, like grunt and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, I have this opportunity where I have a live sales to test with. And it's actually running as a real server on the port that I passed in. Or in this case, I didn't pass in. You have these optional overrides here, right? I can then say, cool, I'm going to use Michael's request library, for instance. Have you guys seen this before? If you're ever sending HTTP requests from Node, this is kind of this is my jam. Paste that in there. Voila. Now you have, let's throw this up top. what request does is just sends an HTTP request to, right, it sends an HTTP request to whatever endpoint you specify. And in this case, what we care about testing is test/login, right? And then, we have this error, the response, and the body. Then we'll go ahead and fail our tests, which it depends like what testing library you're using. If this was Mocha, you can just throw, and most things you can just throw, and it'll catch that error. In Mocha, you would like wrap all this part up in a, this bit would be inside of a it should work for the test login thing, right? Route. And yeah, do that kind of deal, right? And then you would wrap that in a before. And this would be like you would wrap all this stuff in the before, right? So I'm going to comment that out for right now and just have it actually respond with this thing. Whenever it's done, we'll make a function called alldone. That alldone function is here, we'll call alldone with error and return in this case. Otherwise, we will call alldone with no error. And here's where we would test our stuff. So maybe we expect let's just log our body for right now. But, to do actually test that the body is what we expect. Right? And we would need to pass in, a username. We happen to know that, Mike's in there, and then password is bonjour. So then in your before, you would also want to do like, okay, well, user create and that kind of thing. So something else you might consider is using the in-memory adapter. So that way you're not actually writing something to disk. You're just newing up the Sails, lifting it. It's all stored in memory, and then when Sails goes away, bam, it's gone, right? And you can do that over and over and over again without creating files. The way the current Sails unit tests work internally, or integration tests, is it will actually create files on disk and then lift it. But this is an easy way because it's just your project. You already have the files. So hopefully that's a good start. Let's try it. So whenever you see that, in case anyone's hadn't seen that before with Node, that just means you need to do npm install whatever that is, because you're missing that dependency. Something that you might not have seen before is this, though, and that'll actually add it to your package.json file for you, which is handy. And if you want it as a dev dependency, you can do that, which is cool. But anyways, that comes along. Look at all that code we're not writing right now. So basically, that's good for integration tests. For unit tests right now, I would play it by ear and kind of test your own functions. If you're unit testing your controllers, that's probably taking it a bit too far as, the number of tests you need to write to know whether it's going to work, I would say. So we'll run test, login test. I'm already running a server on port 1337, it looks like. Yeah, I think I might just need to... Yeah, so, I think at some point we probably did an unclean cleanup, or we didn't actually lower Sails. In that time we didn't lower Sails, we left it running. So I'm just going to pass in a different port for right now, maybe like 1338, and then we'll see if that works. Anyways, I think it's sort of in a bind at the moment, but you get the idea. That's kind of where we're heading with the built-in support for generating tests. Right now, you kind of have to figure it out yourself with Node. But it's kind of what you have to do with Express anyways. So, but you're right, it'd be a great improvement. All right, so probably not a whole lot of time left, but what else? Any burning questions? Yeah, go ahead.
About REST APIs, let's say if I want to extend or override the default root, how should I do that?
Yeah, so you would write a if you want to change, you want to basically always use the tools that are there for you until they become irrelevant, right? So if you can use the default find logic and it works for you, if you end up rewriting the find action in your controller, you've got to write a bunch of crap, right? Sometimes that happens, and so if I want to go into here and in the remark controller, for instance, I'm going to resurrect it from the dead so we can use it. Let's not do it in the remark controller because I don't know what I'm doing with CoffeeScript, but let's do it in here in the user controller. Just to check, we can. Okay. So there's our users. I'll make a few more, just empty ones. Let's say that I don't like that find, right? It's not exactly what I need. Maybe I need to actually join some other data from somewhere else and include it, or do some crazy reporting stuff for this user list. Okay, well, what I can do, that's the easiest thing to do, is just go in here and override the find method and create a find action. So now you have this custom logic, and it's going to do whatever you say, right? So if I say res.json, oh boy, I have a lot of work to do, then I changed the backend, so I got to restart the server. Right, so there you go. That's the total override option, right? Now, as far as changing the routes themselves, that's something that we expanded a lot more recently in Sails. So if you go to this controllers.js file now in your config, there's 3 types of automatically generated routes in Sails. There's the ones for every action you create in your controller. So if I have an email controller and I add a send action or a method, it's going to automatically create routes for get, put, post, and delete for send, which may not actually be what you want, right? If you don't want that globally, you disable it here. And you can also do that on a per controller basis in this config object. Okay. So then, if as far as the other ones, you have you have REST, which is the one that'll go if you have something that's like a boat, boat/ID would get you that particular boat/boat would get all of the boats, that sort of thing. The RESTful routes, and then shortcuts are these horrible ones that you should never use in production that I was using the whole time we were talking, right? To make boats or make remarks from the URL bar because I'm too lazy to go into like Postman and create that stuff. So if you don't want shortcuts for production, just turn it off right there, and that's kind of the idea. Prefix, sometimes you have like this is the 30th version of the API, and so you might want to either on a per controller basis or globally throw all of these routes behind some kind of prefix, like API v2. So if I do that, then now I don't have my users here anymore. No dice. I have to do API v2 user, and now I have all that stuff. And it all works kind of the same way, right? And create still works because it's overriding. It's seeing create as an ID for the blueprint. Basically, it's trying to find a user with ID create. And the reason why it does that is because Mongo IDs are strings, so we have to put that through, if that makes sense. All of the logic to control that is normally handled by Sails, but because I've overridden this find controller, I'm on my own, right? So the other thing that's kind of cool that you might enjoy is, I'm going to get rid of that prefix because it's annoying. You can also pluralize things, and this will just use a built-in inflector library. A lot of people prefer, instead of users, or instead of user, you might want users. Let's be sure I did that correctly here. Oh, pluralize true. Right, so now I have to go users to get any of that stuff. And I would do the same thing for users, create, and so on. Then for these other guys here, JSONP will add JSONP support to the built-in thread API for you. So if you want to be able to support JSONP, it's default, off here. If you want it for a particular controller flip it on for that controller. You probably don't want to let everything in your app be JSONP on, especially if you're using cross-site forgery requests, cross-site request forgery protection, because then you're going to expose your CSRF token. That's a security hole. There's more about that in the CSRF file here. There's also built-in core support for pre-flight requests, that kind of stuff. So I hope that kind of gets that started at least. A lot of what you can do sometimes is create a policy, wrap that around the controller in this policy mapping, which, just so you guys can see it, there's examples when you make a new Sails app. If it's something where you can just modify the request enough to make it work, throw it in your policies and you don't have to rewrite all that code again. Okay.
What about concurrency of the data? Concurrency, is it undone in the scenario?
As far as transaction stuff?
Sorry?
As far as like transactions?
Concurrency, when two people try to modify the same data.
Right. So it's completely up to your database, right? If you want to start transactions right now, you can do that using the raw query object on your ORM model, right? So if I'm using MySQL, I can do user.query and then say start transaction, right? And then I'll have to say commit or rollback. So we can't guess when you're going to need to wrap your transactions up. We probably can. There's some things we could do to make a pretty decent guess, but we're doing associations first, then we're adding in built-in transaction support later. So hopefully that helps. Yeah?
Is it true to say that Sails tried to put a REST API to Socket.io?
Uh-huh.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Each request are on Socket.io. There is no HTTP.
There's both, actually. So if you want, let me not override my little chat app anymore. Where did we put it? Where did we put our thing? We have our remark controller. Do we only have one remark right now? Did I delete it? Oh, did I leave that prefix on there? I don't know what I did here. Anyways, yeah, it's getting 404 back because I think we changed some of that stuff. Pluralize false, true, 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 and okay, well, let's take it for a spin anyway, see if it works. Okay, there are our chats again. I just need to restart the server. These things are, so you have support for HTTP with remark, right? And then I can also do socket.get/remark, and then console.log response. Is that what you meant? Okay. And you get a primitive kind of thing built into your client side when you make a new Sails app that'll give you that get, post, put, and delete abstraction on top of the Socket.io client. There's also in the actual API code that's built in, it'll do subscribes and publishes based on what you've found so far.
And so you were talking about Derby and Meteor. You were talking about Derby.
Yeah.
And Meteor also.
Right, and those are more focused on covering the full stack, right? Where
Did you ever test, for example, Derby on production?
did we ever run Derby in production? No, we didn't. We didn't. We basically couldn't sell it to our clients because when they wanted to use anything on the front end that was theirs, it was like there was a whole lot of times where we would go into situations and there would be like, hey, use our backbone models, right? Or use this integration we already have with the API, or we don't trust you to do the integration with our API. And in those cases, it was like, well, first of all, I wouldn't be able to use it anyways, right, from either direction. And then sometimes we'll write just the back end, So it made sense for us to split off. There's actually something called Mass, and we started off as like Sails was like this monolithic thing, and then we broke Mass and Sails apart, and then we just threw Mass away like the withered up tail of like a lizard or something, and now we focus just on Sails.
Because if one would like to build an application which is client-side and also server-side, you have to put maybe Backbone or Angular or whatever framework with Sail in order to make it work.
Right.
Is it true? Yes.
Well, you're going to want to, right? I mean, you can do whatever you want. Here, I just use jQuery for this little chat app. But you should use...
You don't use what stateful application, single-page application.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there will be a little Deezer bit. Because you could have a router, which is both on client and server side.
Right.
And it will maybe handle all of the requests
Right.
for you.
Right.
Free.
But then you're fucked with native apps, right? So that's also a problem. And you're fucked with the refrigerator and the car and the vacuum cleaner and the lamps and things. So we had to have a service-oriented architecture approach underneath. And then I would love, man, to focus on like doing all the really cool stuff as far as integrating something on top of Sails. But I don't have enough resources, right? And so it was kind of came down to let's make the best Rails-like supported solid Node.js framework on the back end that lets you do anything you can do with Meteor out of the box, as long as you're, for a production app, willing to, like, you've got to commit to something else, right? Like, you've got to say Backbone, Angular. Even the Meteor front end can use DBP. It's something that's pretty interesting. I've never tried it, but completely valid point. And that's kind of what I was saying before when we were, like, spiderwebbing all that jQuery code. Like, it's not going to work for a real app, you know? I mean, it'll work for a little while, and then you'll want to make a change 2 hours after you change something and you forgot how it all works. But awesome. What else is anything missing? Important. Cool. Yeah.
Question, would you recommend as a front-end framework between Angular, or Backbone?
Well, honestly, I would probably think maybe Angular nowadays, which I say that being someone who never gets behind Angular, and we use Backbone exclusively internally. We developed lots of tools on top of Backbone to the point where it's almost like Angular on top of Backbone as far as data bindings. Lessons I've learned, it's really important to have fallbacks under each level of abstraction, right? Like we had something, or the original version of Mass, which is the thing we use internally, is like was a lot of magic. This was before Angular existed, to give you automatic data bindings, but it was all from JavaScript and not in your HTML. We canned that and rewrote everything using basically just raw Backbone. You still have to write your Backbone code, and then you get a little bit of bonus stuff that lets you kind of string a lot of the features. Like here we would have just said this is a region, and then the region has, when we were prototyping it, we would say count equals 5, data template equals chat, and then it would basically kind of spit out however many you tell it to, kind of thing. That's it. Angular does a lot of that already, and if we knew what we were doing with Angular as a team, we would probably be using Angular. Having not tried Angular, right, only knowing kind of the basic high-level stuff about it, if you were kind of getting into something, it definitely is good to know about Ember. Ember's always appealed to me, but we just never did it. We use Backbone. Backbone does very little for you. It does parts of it that are really important for you, but you still have to make a choice between, like, do I do data bindings, or do I put models inside of models and then, like, make them global, but then sometimes not, or throw them all around the page. Who knows what's going to happen? So, hopefully that helps. Yeah.
I saw on the human GitHub
Uh-huh.
that there is a discussion about implementing Sails in human.
In
Was
what is it?
6 months ago.
In Yeoman.
Yes.
Yeah. That was before we had Grunt support. So for a long time we were using this tool called Asset Rack, and then we switched to Grunt, which was important because then we didn't have to answer issues about that anymore. Basically, it was like, okay, use Grunt. Now we have full support for everything. the Yeoman generator for Sails makes a lot of sense. It would be pretty cool. I think it's probably out of date now. This guy named Colin Wren wrote it. I think out of California. But yeah, I mean, internally we're not really incentivized to work on a Yeoman generator for Sails because it doesn't really. We're using Sails, the command line tool itself, to make new Sails apps. But if people want to use Yeoman with Sails, that's awesome. And for whatever reason you don't want the Sails command line interface, that makes sense. Yeah. What else, guys? Adapters for Sails right now is worth pointing out. We have a really solid supported MySQL, Postgres, Mongo, and then the development-only disk adapter that are all ready to go, good to use. As far as associations, I've been saying they're coming soon for like 6 months, but we're really close this time. We're using it in production for a client. They work on everything except for Mongo, as you can imagine why, if you've done database modeling. That would be the case. In-memory joins are eventually going to be rolled into the Waterline core. We'll be able to do joins between two different MySQL databases, a MySQL and a Mongo and a Postgres. You get the picture. As it is right now, you can assign different databases per model in Sails. So your users might be using your custom LDAP adapter, but your message might be hooked up to the Gmail POP3 adapter. And your chats might just be chats using MySQL or something, right? Mongo. So that's the vision of that part. But cool things people have done with adapters. There's the Raspberry Pi GPIO adapter, which is effectively useless for anything else but toy. There's a Twitter adapter that, and most of these are like kind of randomly supported, only parts of the actual API. I'm going to be doing a Deezer adapter on Saturday. If y'all want to see anything about custom adapters, I think that's going to be live streams, and it's at Deezer's office here in Paris. Someone just did a Yelp adapter, I think. Someone did a React adapter. It's pretty complete. There's a Redis adapter that's very complete, but we haven't, I can't say we officially support it yet because we haven't written tests. Yeah, there's a few. There's actually a JS DOM adapter, which if you're ever going to do some scraping, JS DOM isn't great for scraping, turns out, which is why I abandoned it. There is a JS adapter as well. So, basically, if you want to treat a web page like a database model, and you want to be able to do finds on it using selectors, that's the work. Yeah.
Will you share your slides somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put a link to Joe's slides too from before, because those are really good, just from a kind of where is all this heading, big picture perspective. And this, I think we recorded most of it, assuming it worked, so we'll be able to make an updated screencast. Cool. That's about all I've got to talk about. I could keep hacking on Bonjour here. I'll make a repo for this, actually. And how many of you guys have released your own npm module before? Okay, awesome. I'm going to release this utterly useless thing to anyone else as an npm module, just because everyone should see how easy it is to use npm and become an open source contributor. Because I had never done open source before Node, and then now I have a really big open source module on Node. So I think everyone should try it. It's really easy. So make a Git repository. You don't even have to do this part. Make this thing, go in here and new repo. This is Bonjour. This is from another useless app from HETIC. No, a useless app we built. It's actually really useful. It's an app we built together. All right, it's public. We'll do all that. You actually get a README and a get ignore by default in a new Sails project, so you don't need any of that business. If we wanted to, I guess we should probably do the MIT license stuff. Git remote add origin that, and then we kind of slam lots of keys. Commit. All right. Oh, do the U thing, right? Git push U origin master. All right. So now we have our stuff in here, and I didn't make a license file, but there's actually this really MIT license Sails. I think you can like, I forget what we did exactly. At the very bottom of the page here. Ah, crap. I don't remember how we generated this. Now I think you can just do it with GitHub. But we'll just copy and paste this stuff in here. Touch license.md. Bam. This will say Mike McNeil and all of the people in the place in HETIC. Okay. All right. So now we're all open source contributors, whether you like it or not, and we'll push that up because we make all the commits and click this so we don't have to think about it anymore. There's Bonjour. Let's publish it to NPM. Cool. So by default, I think that we set private true in your package JSON. This is good because it's so easy to publish these things to NPM that you might say inadvertently publish a proprietary app for a Fortune 500 app, company to NPM. So it's important to always put private true in your package JSON file. So removed private true. And then there's this really cool thing called npm version in the npm command line tool, and I do npm version major, and now it creates a git tag for me, and then sets package JSON equal to 1.0.0 or whatever, and then I do git push and git push tags because we want to do this properly here, and then I do npm publish. And the first time you do this, you need to create an npm thing for yourself. But you can do it all from the command line. And then, like, this is going to be, then I can just npm install, oh, Bonjour's probably taken, isn't it? I bet it is. So, yeah, with npm, you have to, I don't know. We may have gotten the Bonjour namespace, guys. And so Isaac does go through and clean these out sometimes. But ours looks real enough. Okay. Hey, look at that. So now I can npm install Bonjour from anywhere, and I get it. So like in Sails never would have happened if I hadn't been like half drunk sitting around and tried that out. It's super cool, and it's really accessible if you want to do pull requests because it is so low barrier to entry. People are likely to release more, and people are more likely to accept your pull requests. So it's a really cool community.